Don't worry about upgrading Mom's old furnace this winter. She'll be dead soon anyway, and we shouldn't waste money on temporary fixes when we need to save for the kids' college funds. Those were the words my daughter-in-law Jessica Chen said while standing in my modest living room last Thursday evening, having no idea she was casually dismissing Margaret Thornfield, the anonymous founder and controlling shareholder of Thornfield Industries, a $1.2 billion agricultural technology empire that had been quietly funding her family's $3.8 million Napa Valley estate, her children's elite private academy tuition at Helena Preparatory, her luxury lifestyle coordination, and whose sophisticated trust management systems had been building her expected $7 through million-dollar inheritance through 5 decades of strategic innovation and investment. Never knowing that her cruel dismissal of my supposed mortality would trigger the most expensive lesson about respect and elderly dignity that any ungrateful daughter-in-law had ever received. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The modest ranch-style home at 8047 Vineyard Lane in Sebastopol, California, where I've lived for the past 12 years, appears to visiting family members as exactly what you'd expect from a retired elementary school teacher who depends on Social Security and a small pension to cover basic living expenses. The weathered exterior with its faded yellow, the small front yard with its practical drought-resistant landscaping, and the 1970s-era windows that occasionally stick during winter months, create the perfect impression of an elderly woman living on a fixed income while managing the gradual decline that accompanies aging and reduced resources in Northern California's increasingly expensive housing market. The single-story layout with its narrow hallways, linoleum kitchen floor, and original wood paneling throughout the living areas reinforces every assumption about elderly housing limitations and financial constraints that prevent seniors from maintaining the standards they enjoyed during their working years. The furniture itself, a collection of pieces accumulated over decades rather than purchased as coordinated sets, tells the story that family members expect to hear about: gradual downsizing and practical choices that prioritize function over aesthetics, when resources become limited and style considerations must yield to budget realities and basic comfort needs. My daily routine, as observed by Jessica and Michael during their increasingly brief monthly visit, perfectly supports their assumptions about retirement limitations and social isolation that affects elderly people who lack the resources to maintain active social lives and contemporary lifestyle standards. They see me every morning in my small kitchen, carefully measuring coffee grounds to avoid waste, organizing grocery store coupons in labeled envelopes, and maintaining detailed household expense records that suggest someone whose financial decisions revolve around saving 17 cents on store-brand cereal and choosing between cable television and slightly higher heating bills during winter months. The prescription medication routine dominates my bathroom counter and kitchen table, provides Jessica with additional evidence of mounting healthcare costs and age-related expenses that she treats as inevitable burdens, rather than normal family responsibilities that honor lifetime contributions and maintain elderly dignity. The weekly pill organizer with its 7 carefully labeled compartments, each filled with generic medications for blood pressure, arthritis, and cholesterol management, sits prominently next to Medicare paperwork and pharmacy receipts that Jessica occasionally helps me navigate while explaining the importance of understanding your coverage limitations and finding ways to reduce out-of-pocket expenses that can really impact seniors on restricted budget. The 2012 Toyota Camry that I drive, with its practical silver exterior and basic interior maintained through careful upkeep and discount oil changes from Quick Lube Express, reinforces Jessica and Michael's comfortable assumption that I'm living paycheck to paycheck while depending on family assistance for major expenses like automotive repairs, medical co-payments, and the emergency situations that exceed my supposed limited budget and technological understanding. The car's clean but obviously aged interior with 89,000 miles on the odometer and a few minor cosmetic issues like worn seat fabric and a small crack in the rear windows suggests someone who maintains her vehicle carefully but can't afford luxury upgrades or frequent replacements that younger professionals consider routine expenses. The grocery shopping expeditions that form the cornerstone of my carefully maintained facade occur every Tuesday morning at the Sebastopol Safeway, where I arrive precisely when senior citizen discounts become effective and spend considerable time comparing unit prices on items like generic pasta sauce, store-brand wheat bread, and the marked-down produce that other shoppers ignore because of minor cosmetic imperfections. The shopping cart that I push through the aisles contains exactly the items you'd expect from someone calculating every purchase. Canned soup on sale for one-the-day-old bakery items reduced to half price that provide both nutrition and evidence of careful financial planning throughout retirement years. What makes my performance particularly convincing is the authentic attention to detail that comes from genuinely understanding how people with limited resources navigate daily life in Sonoma County's expensive economy. The household management systems that I maintain, from tracking utility usage to avoid peak rate charges to coordinating prescription refills for maximum insurance coverage, reflect genuine expertise about senior living strategies and budget optimization that most wealthy people never develop, because they've never needed such practical knowledge about resource conservation and expense management. The social activities that I participate in throughout the Sebastopol community reinforce every assumption about elderly social networking and volunteer engagement that fills retirement hours while providing meaning and connection for seniors who lack resources for expensive entertainment and travel. My regular attendance at the Sebastopol Community Center's senior programming, my volunteer work at the local food bank every Wednesday morning, and my participation in the library's book discussion group create exactly the social profile that suggests someone whose activities revolve around free or low-cost community resources rather than expensive leisure pursuits and exclusive social networking that require substantial discretionary income. The technology limitations that I display during family visits provide crucial evidence of generational gaps and learning challenges that prevent elderly people from understanding contemporary financial management and digital communication systems that younger generations navigate effortlessly. When Jessica attempts to show me how to use smartphone banking apps or online bill payment systems, I respond with appropriate confusion and resistance, asking repeated questions about security concerns and expressing preference for traditional paper statements and in-person banking that require trips to the local Wells Fargo branch where tellers recognize me and provide the personal service that older customers appreciate and depend on for financial guidance. The fashion choices that I maintain during family visits and public appearances reinforce every stereotype about elderly women who shop primarily at discount retailers and choose clothing based on comfort and durability rather than style or social positioning. The cardigans from Target, comfortable walking shoes from Payless Shoe Source, and practical slacks from the Kohl's senior section create exactly the visual impression that supports assumptions about limited discretionary income and reduced attention to personal appearance that younger generations sometimes associate with aging and social withdrawal from contemporary fashion trends and style consciousness. The home maintenance approach that I demonstrate whenever family members visit reveals systematic deferred maintenance and budget-conscious repair strategies that suggest someone whose housing decisions prioritize basic functionality over comfort or aesthetic improvement. The furnace that's been making unusual noises for the past 6 months, the kitchen faucet that drips occasionally, and the front steps that need minor concrete repair all provide perfect documentation of maintenance backlogs that accumulate when fixed incomes limit homeowner flexibility and force difficult choices between competing repair priorities and expense management throughout aging infrastructure and limited resource. Michael Thornfield, my only son, graduated from UC Davis in 2003 with a degree in agricultural science and has built what appears to be a successful career as a senior agricultural consultant for premium wineries throughout Napa and Sonoma counties. His expertise in soil management, irrigation optimization, and sustainable farming practices has earned him a reputation as one of Northern California's most knowledgeable agricultural specialists, commanding consulting fees that seem to justify his family's affluent lifestyle and expensive residential choices in one of America's most exclusive wine regions. The professional image that Michael has cultivated throughout his 20-year career includes membership in prestigious agricultural organizations, regular speaking engagements at wine industry conferences, and advisory positions with several high-profile vineyards that have enhanced his credibility and market positioning within California's competitive agricultural consulting market. His LinkedIn profile and professional networking activities suggest exactly the kind of career trajectory that enables upper-middle-class prosperity and provides foundation for the lifestyle choices that he and Jessica have made throughout their marriage and family development. What Michael doesn't know, what I've never told him, and what he's never suspected despite 20 years of professional success, is that every significant client relationship, every major consulting contract, and every career advancement opportunity has been carefully orchestrated through business networks and professional connections that I've coordinated through discreet influence and strategic relationship management that operates invisibly throughout Northern California's agricultural industry and wine business community. The consulting firm where Michael worked, Agritech Solutions, secured its most profitable client relationships through introductions and business development coordination that I facilitated through professional networks and industry connections. Though Michael believes his expertise and professional reputation attracted these opportunities through merit and marketing efforts, the contracts that provide his primary income, the networking events that connect him with potential clients, the professional references that validate his expertise, all reflect systematic coordination through business relationships that I've cultivated over decades of strategic investment and industry involvement. Jessica Chen, whom Michael met at a wine tasting event in Napa Valley 6 years ago, brought her own professional credentials and social positioning expectations that complemented Michael's agricultural expertise while adding layers of lifestyle enhancement and status management that gradually transformed their family priorities from modest comfort to luxury demonstration. Social competitive positioning that required increasingly expensive lifestyle maintenance and status symbol accumulation throughout Sonoma County's affluent professional community. Jessica's background as a former marketing coordinator for luxury hospitality companies provided her with sophisticated understanding of lifestyle management, social position, and the presentation strategies that enable professional couples to maintain their status and influence within competitive social environments, where appearance and networking capabilities determine business opportunities and social acceptance. Her systematic approach to family image management consistently prioritized visible success demonstrations over authentic relationship building and community contribution that might not provide measurable returns on investment or social advancement opportunity. The marriage between Michael and Jessica that began with genuine affection and shared interests in wine culture and agricultural innovation gradually evolved into a partnership focused primarily on lifestyle optimization, social positioning, and the kind of competitive family management that treats relationships as strategic assets rather than sources of emotional fulfillment and mutual support that provide stability and meaning throughout life transitions and economic changes that test character and family loyalty. The transfer of Jessica from someone who initially showed appropriate respect and family consideration into a person whose priorities could be systematically corrupted by social positioning, obsessions, and lifestyle enhancement goals had been gradual but increasingly apparent over the past 3 years, since the birth of their second child, David, when the financial pressures of maintaining their affluent lifestyle while supporting 2 children's educational and extracurricular expenses began requiring more strategic resource allocation and family obligation management. The early signs of character deterioration became apparent during family holiday gatherings, when Jessica's conversations increasingly focused on lifestyle comparisons with other Napa Valley families, professional networking strategies that could enhance Michael's client development, and the educational investments necessary to ensure Emma and David's competitive positioning for elite university admission and professional advancement opportunities. Her systematic evaluation of family activities and relationships according to strategic value and lifestyle enhancement potential gradually excluded considerations about elderly care responsibilities and intergenerational respect that might interfere with resource optimization and social advancement, priorities. The influence operations that Jessica conducted to reshape Michael's understanding of family priorities and resource allocation were sophisticated manipulation techniques that exploited his natural ambition while systematically undermining his connection to family traditions and elderly respect that had previously guided his decisions about time management and financial planning. Her suggestions about optimizing family visit frequency, streamlining elderly care obligation, and professionalizing financial support for aging relatives consistently reinforced Michael's growing impatience with family responsibilities that interfered with career networking and lifestyle enhancement opportunities. The social networking activities that Jessica organized for their family consistently excluded elderly participation and focused on experiences that reinforced their identification with successful professional couples rather than multi-generational family systems that valued wisdom and experience alongside innovation and career advancement. The dinner party, wine country events, and cultural activities that filled their social calendar systematically prioritized relationships that could enhance their professional development or social positioning, while reducing time and attention available for family obligations and elderly involvement that might compromise their image or limit their networking effectiveness. The financial planning strategies that Jessica implemented for their household systematically prioritized lifestyle enhancement, children's competitive educational positioning, and social status demonstration over family support, elderly care responsibilities, and the kind of intergenerational assistance that honors lifetime contributions while maintaining family connections across economic transitions and aging processes that require family involvement and community support. The pattern of elderly marginalization that characterized Jessica's approach to family relationship management became increasingly apparent through her systematic efforts to minimize my involvement in family decisions, social activities, and the grandchildren's educational and cultural development. Her scheduling of important family events that conflicted with my availability, her creation of social obligations that excluded elderly participation, and her subtle criticism of my supposed technological limitations represented coordinated strategy to position me as burden rather than resource in family planning and relationship management. The conversations that Jessica initiated about age-appropriate activities and realistic expectation for elderly involvement consistently suggested that my participation in family life should be limited to occasions that didn't interfere with their social positioning or professional networking requirement. Her recommendations about senior living communities that might provide more suitable social environments and comprehensive services reflected systematic preparation for transferring elderly care responsibility to professional providers while eliminating family obligation and personal involvement that might compromise their lifestyle optimization and resource allocation strategies. The gift-giving patterns that Jessica established for birthdays, holiday and special occasions revealed her systematic devaluation of elderly preferences and interests in favor of practical items that suggested someone whose needs should be managed efficiently rather than honored through thoughtful consideration and personal attention. The household items, basic clothing, and gift cards that replaced personal presence and meaningful gestures demonstrated her transition from viewing me as family member worthy of love and respect to elderly obligation requiring minimal compliance and resource management. The grandchildren interaction patterns with me reflected Jessica's systematic influence and guidance about elderly relationships and family hierarchies that positioned grandparents as optional entertainment rather than wisdom sources and family foundation that provide cultural continuity and emotional support throughout child development and character formation. Emma and David's increasingly brief and distracted interactions during family visits suggested coaching about appropriate elderly engagement that didn't interfere with their educational priorities and social development activities that Jess considered more valuable than intergenerational relationship building. The specific incident that would ultimately trigger Jessica's comprehensive education about respect and consequences, began developing 3 weeks earlier when the furnace in my Sebastopol home started making unusual noises during the October cold snap that marked the beginning of Northern California's winter heating season. The diagnostic evaluation that revealed a failing heat exchanger and outdated electrical components, requiring comprehensive repair or replacement, provided Jessica with perfect opportunity to demonstrate her systematic approach to elderly care management and resource allocation that prioritized convenience over comfort and financial efficiency over family dignity. The repair estimate, that totaled $8,400 for furnace replacement and electrical upgrades necessary to support modern heating efficiency, represented exactly the kind of maintenance expense that tests family priorities and reveals authentic values about elderly care responsibilities versus lifestyle optimization and resource management that benefits younger family members' financial planning and discretionary spending opportunities. The timing of this expense, coinciding with Emma's Stanford University application process and David's enrollment in elite youth soccer programming, created perfect circumstances for Jessica to demonstrate her systematic elderly marginalization and family hierarchy management. Preliminary conversations that Jessica initiated with Michael about practical elderly care planning and realistic maintenance investments revealed her systematic preparation for positioning my comfort needs as optional expenses that interfered with more important family financial priorities. Educational investment strategies. Her research into senior living facilities that provide comprehensive heating and maintenance services demonstrated strategic planning for elderly obligation elimination while maintaining appearance of family concern and responsible care coordination. The family meeting that Jessica organized for Thursday evening, November 14, 2024, was presented as necessary discussion about Mom's housing situation and practical planning for her remaining years, but actually represented carefully coordinated intervention designed to establish family consensus about elderly care limitation and resource reallocation that would benefit their lifestyle enhancement while reducing family obligation and personal involvement that might compromise their social positioning and financial flexibility. Jessica's arrival at my Sebastopol home that Thursday evening carried all the confidence of someone who believed she was managing a routine family obligation through practical decision-making and efficient resource allocation. Her designer handbag, professionally styled appearance, and systematic preparation of talking points about realistic elderly care expectations demonstrated complete comfort with treating elderly family members as problems requiring solution rather than individuals deserving respect and consideration throughout aging processes and family relationship. Conversation that unfolded in my modest living room revealed Jessica's systematic preparation for elderly dismissal and family obligation elimination through practical arguments and financial logic that positioned my basic comfort needs as unreasonable expenses that interfered with more important family priorities. Her detailed presentation about furnace repair costs, alternative housing options, and age-appropriate living arrangements demonstrated sophisticated planning for elderly marginalization while maintaining appearance of responsible family management and caring concern. Michael's genuine discomfort with Jessica's systematic elderly dismissal provided additional documentation of family dynamics and influence patterns that revealed his authentic character versus his wife's strategic family management approach. His expressions of concern about my comfort and health, his willingness to prioritize my needs over financial convenience, and his obvious distress at Jessica's casual dismissal of my mortality demonstrated values and character that had been systematically undermined, but not completely destroyed, through years of subtle manipulation and lifestyle pressure. The moment that sealed Jessica's fate occurred when she delivered her ultimate assessment of family resource allocation and elderly value calculation with comfortable confidence that her practical approach would be accepted as reasonable family planning and efficient obligation management. Don't worry about upgrading Mom's old furnace this winter, she'll be dead soon anyway, and we shouldn't waste money on temporary fixes when we need to save for the kids' college funds. The casual cruelty of dismissing elderly mortality as financial planning fact, the systematic dehumanization that treated my remaining years as inconvenient expense, and the complete absence of respect or dignity in her practical calculation, revealed character failure so profound that it justified immediate and comprehensive consequences through systems and resources she had never suspected existed beneath my carefully maintained facade of elderly limitation and financial dependency. As I sat in my modest living room, observing Jessica's comfortable expectation that her cruel assessment would be accepted as reasonable family management, I realized that the character evaluation protocols that had been documenting her systematic elderly dismissal and family loyalty failure would soon need to implement the most comprehensive education about respect and consequences that any ungrateful daughter-in-law had ever received. The furnace repair that she considered wasteful investment would soon become the least significant expense in a family financial restructuring that would cost her everything she had taken for granted about inheritance entitlement and lifestyle security, while teaching her that elderly wisdom and hidden authority aren't optional conveniences that disappear when they become inconvenient for resource optimization and social positioning strategy. The modest lifestyle that I've maintained in Sebastopol for the past 12 years represents one of the most sophisticated identity management operations in Northern California, designed to test family character while protecting a business empire that extends far beyond what anyone in my family has ever suspected. Every detail of my apparent financial limitations, from the carefully selected thrift store clothing to the meticulously maintained grocery shopping routine, has been orchestrated to create an absolutely convincing portrait of an elderly woman living on the edge of financial security while depending on family goodwill and social security benefits for survival. The monthly budget performance that I demonstrate during family visits involves genuine attention to penny-pinching strategies and resource conservation that most wealthy people never master because they've never experienced the practical constraints that shape daily decision-making for seniors on fixed incomes. My systematic comparison shopping, coupon organization, and careful tracking of household expenses reflect authentic expertise about budget optimization that I developed through extensive research and consultation with financial planning specialists who work with elderly clients throughout Sonoma County's expensive housing market and challenging economic environment. The prescription medication management routine that dominates my kitchen counter and bathroom organization provides perfect documentation of healthcare costs and insurance coordination challenges that affect elderly people throughout California's complex medical system. The weekly pill organizer, generic medication preferences, and Medicare paperwork coordination that Jessica occasionally assists with represent genuine understanding of senior healthcare navigation that most affluent people never encounter because their resources provide access to concierge medical services and comprehensive insurance coverage that eliminates bureaucratic complexity and cost management concerns. The household maintenance approach that I demonstrate whenever Michael and Jessica visit reveals systematic deferred repair strategies and budget-conscious decision-making that suggests someone whose housing choices are constrained by financial limitations rather than aesthetic preferences or comfort optimization. The furnace that's been making concerning noises, the kitchen faucet that requires periodic adjustment, and the exterior paint that shows weathering from 12 years of California sun exposure all provide perfect evidence of maintenance. Backlogs that accumulate when fixed incomes force difficult choices between competing priorities and expense management. The transportation coordination that I maintain through my aging Toyota Camry reinforces every assumption about elderly mobility limitations and automotive affordability constraints
that affect senior independence and daily living capability throughout Northern California's sprawling geography and limited public transportation infrastructure. The vehicle's modest appearance, careful maintenance records, and basic feature set suggest someone whose automotive decisions prioritize reliability and fuel economy over comfort, technology integration, or status demonstration that younger generations consider routine automotive amenity. The social activities that fill my weekly schedule throughout the Sebastopol community reinforce every expectation about elderly social networking and volunteer engagement that provides meaning and connection for seniors who lack resources for expensive entertainment and travel opportunities.
The digital limitations that I display during family interactions provide crucial evidence of generational gaps and learning challenges that prevent elderly people from understanding contemporary financial management, communication systems, and technological integration that younger generations navigate effortlessly through smartphone applications and online platforms. When Jessica attempts to demonstrate mobile banking apps or online bill payment systems, my responses include appropriate confusion about security protocols, resistance to digital automation, and preference for traditional paper-based financial management that requires in-person banking and manual record-keeping. The smartphone that I carry, a basic model purchased 3 years ago from the Verizon store in Santa Rosa, contains exactly the limit functionality that family members expect from someone whose technological needs involve emergency communication and occasional text messaging rather than social media integration, mobile commerce, or sophisticated application coordination. The simple contact list, basic camera usage, and occasional confusion about notification management reinforce assumptions about elderly technology adoption challenges and learning curve difficulties that affect digital engagement and online service utilization. The computer setup in my spare bedroom appears to be a basic desktop system, purchased for email communication and occasional internet browsing, complete with outdated software, simple peripherals, and the kind of basic functionality that suggests someone whose digital needs involve reading news websites and maintaining correspondence with distant relatives rather than sophisticated online financial management or business coordination. The visible passwords written on sticky notes, basic security settings, and preference for printed documents rather than digital file management create perfect documentation of technological limitations and security concerns that affect elderly computer usage. The social media absence that characterizes my online presence reinforces assumptions about elderly isolation and limited understanding of contemporary communication methods that younger generations use for professional networking, social coordination, and business development throughout their careers and personal relationships. The lack of Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or any other social networking presence suggests someone whose communication patterns remain focused on traditional methods like telephone calls and handwritten correspondence rather than digital platforms and online community engagement. The banking routine that I maintain through Wells Fargo's Sebastopol branch provides perfect documentation of traditional financial management, preferences, and in-person service requirements that elderly customers often prefer over digital banking solutions and automated transaction process. My weekly visits to conduct routine transactions, preference for paper statements over electronic delivery, and relationships with individual tellers who recognize me and provide personalized service create exactly the banking profile that suggests someone whose financial management reflects generational preferences and technological comfort limitations. The bill payment coordination that I demonstrate involves traditional check writing, postal mail delivery, and manual record keeping that appears to reflect elderly financial management habits and preference for paper-based documentation rather than online payment systems and electronic transaction processing. The checkbook register that I maintain with careful handwritten entry, the organized filing system for monthly statements, and the systematic approach to due date management reinforce assumptions about elderly financial organization and traditional money management that predates digital banking integration. The investment knowledge that I display during financial discussions with family members reflects basic understanding of savings accounts, certificate of deposits, and conservative investment approaches that elderly people often prefer for retirement security and principal protection, rather than aggressive growth strategies or sophisticated portfolio management that younger generations pursue through online trading platforms and professional wealth management services. My questions about market volatility, preference for guaranteed returns, and concerns about investment risk create perfect documentation of conservative elderly investment psychology and risk aversion. The insurance coordination that governs my healthcare, automotive, and homeowner coverage appears to reflect budget-conscious policy selection and premium optimization that elderly people often pursue to minimize fixed costs while maintaining adequate protection for essential needs. The basic coverage levels, high deductible choices, and systematic comparison shopping for annual renewal demonstrate exactly the kind of insurance management that suggests someone whose policy decisions prioritize affordability over comprehensive coverage and convenience feature. Activities that provide structure and meaning for my weekly schedule throughout Sebastopol create perfect documentation of elderly community engagement and social contribution that honor lifetime experience while building relationships with other seniors who share similar circumstances and interests. My work at the Redwood Food Bank every Wednesday morning involves sorting donations, coordinating distribution logistics, and providing customer service to community members who depend on food assistance programs throughout Sonoma County's expensive economy and challenging employment market. Literacy tutoring that I provide through the Sebastopol Library's adult education program demonstrates exactly the kind of meaningful volunteer engagement that retired educators often pursue to maintain professional identity while contributing special identity, individual advancement. The one-on-one sessions with adult learners who are developing reading skills for employment advancement or personal enrichment provide authentic purpose and social connection, while reinforcing my identity as someone whose primary expertise involves elementary education rather than business management or financial coordination. The book discussion group that meets monthly at the library provides perfect social networking and intellectual engagement that elderly people often value for mental stimulation and community connection throughout retirement years, when professional relationships and workplace social structures no longer provide regular intellectual challenge and social interaction. The discussions about contemporary fiction, memoir, and historical topics create opportunities for meaningful conversation and relationship building with other community members who share literary interests and cultural engagement priorities. The church attendance that characterizes my Sunday routine at Sebastopol Community Church reinforces traditional elderly social networking and spiritual engagement that provide meaning and connection throughout aging processes and life transitions that require community support and cultural continuity. The participation in worship service, coffee hour fellowship, and occasional volunteer coordination for church fundraising events create exactly the religious and social profile that suggests someone whose spiritual life provides foundation for community involvement and personal meaning throughout retirement years. The health management routine that I maintain through Sonoma County's medical system provides perfect documentation of elderly health challenges and insurance coordination complexity that affects senior medical care and treatment accessibility throughout California's expensive healthcare environment. My primary care physician relationship with Dr. Sarah Martinez at Sebastopol Family Medicine includes regular appointments for routine monitoring, prescription management, and preventive care that demonstrates appropriate elderly health maintenance while revealing the budget constraints and insurance limitations that affect treatment options and specialist access. The prescription medication coordination that dominates my monthly healthcare routine involves careful management of generic drug preferences, insurance co-payment optimization, and pharmacy discount program utilization that elderly people often require to manage medication costs within fixed income budgets. The systematic pill organization, refill schedule, and medication review discussions with pharmacists at CVS create perfect documentation of healthcare expense management and medication adherence strategies that characterize elderly medical care throughout communities where prescription costs significantly impact household budgets. The specialist care coordination that I maintain for arthritis management and blood pressure monitoring involves referral navigation, appointment schedule, and insurance authorization processes that elderly patients often find challenging and time-consuming within contemporary medical systems that prioritize efficiency over patient convenience and relationship-based care. The orthopedic consultations with Dr. Robert Kim at Petaluma Medical Center and cardiology monitoring with Dr. Lisa Chen at Santa Rosa Heart Institute demonstrate appropriate elderly specialty care while revealing the transportation challenges and scheduling complexity that affect senior healthcare access. The physical therapy sessions that I attend twice weekly at Sebastopol Physical Therapy for arthritis management and mobility maintenance provide perfect documentation of elderly health investment and insurance-covered treatment that helps seniors maintain independence and quality of life throughout aging process that require professional intervention and structured exercise program. The coordination with therapist Jennifer Walsh and systematic adherence to home exercise protocols demonstrate exactly the kind of proactive health management that elderly people often pursue to maintain function and prevent decline. The neighborhood relationships that I've cultivated throughout my 12 years in Sebastopol create perfect documentation of elderly community integration and mutual support networks that provide security and social connection for seniors who live independently while managing age-related challenges and limited resources. My interactions with immediate neighbors like retired teacher Mary Rodriguez and widowed accountant Robert Kim involve regular check-ins, mutual assistance with minor household tasks, and informal social connections that characterize healthy elderly community engagement and neighborhood stability. The friendship patterns that I maintain with other seniors throughout Sebastopol reflect common elderly social networking and shared interest coordination that provide meaning and connection throughout retirement years when professional relationships and workplace social structures no longer provide regular interaction and community engagement. The weekly coffee meetings with library volunteer coordinator Patricia Wong, monthly lunch dates with former teaching colleague Susan Martinez, and informal gardening conversations with community center friends create exactly the social calendar that suggests someone whose relationships focus on peer connections and shared experiences rather than intergenerational family involvement or professional network. The extended family relationships that I maintain with distant relatives in other California communities involve periodic telephone contact, holiday card exchange, and occasional visits that demonstrate traditional elderly family connection patterns while reinforcing assumptions about limited travel resources and social networking scope. The relationships with my late husband's sister Helen in Sacramento, my college roommate Dorothy in San Jose, and various cousins throughout the Central Valley create perfect documentation of elderly family coordination and cultural continuity that honor relationships while acknowledging geographic and resource limitations that affect travel frequency and visit duration. The service provider relationships that facilitate my independent living throughout Sebastopol include regular interactions with local businesses and community services that provide essential support for elderly homeowners who manage property maintenance, healthcare coordination, and daily living needs through established community networks. My relationships with handyman Carlos Mendez for minor repairs, gardener Alice Wong for yard maintenance, and house cleaner Maria Santos for periodic deep cleaning demonstrate exactly the kind of service coordination that elderly people often require to maintain independence while managing physical limitations and budget constraints. The grandparent role that I maintain with Emma and David involves exactly the kind of limited but affectionate interaction that busy families often coordinate with elderly relatives who live modestly and lack resources for expensive gifts or elaborate entertainment options. My gifts of handmade items, books from used bookstore and small amounts of cash for birthdays, create perfect documentation of elderly grandparent limitation, while demonstrating love and attention within apparent budget constraints that prevent more substantial gift giving or experience coordination. The holiday participation that characterizes my involvement in family celebrations involves contributions of homemade desserts, simple decoration and assistance with meal preparation that demonstrate elderly family value, while acknowledging the resource limitations that prevent hosting elaborate gatherings or providing expensive entertainment and gift coordination. My role during Christmas, Thanksgiving, and birthday celebrations reflects exactly the kind of helpful but limited elderly participation that families often accommodate while managing celebration, planning and expense coordination through younger generations with greater resources and organizational capability. The babysitting availability that I occasionally provide for Emma and David during family emergencies or schedule conflicts demonstrates elderly usefulness and family contribution, while reinforcing assumptions about my limited social calendar and availability for family assistance when needed. The simple activities that I coordinate during these occasions, reading sessions, basic craft projects, and educational games using materials from dollar stores, create perfect documentation of elderly resourcefulness and creative engagement within budget limitations that prevent expensive entertainment or sophisticated activity coordination. The advice and wisdom sharing that I offer during family conversations involves exactly the kind of life experience perspective and practical guidance that elderly family members often provide, while acknowledging the generational differences and technological changes that limit contemporary relevance and application. My stories about raising managing household budgets during economic challenges and navigating life transitions create appropriate elderly contribution to family conversations, while reinforcing assumptions about my limited understanding of contemporary professional challenges and technological solutions. The emergency preparedness that I maintain for household problems, health issues, and financial challenges involves exactly the kind of careful planning and resource conservation that elderly people often develop to manage independence, while acknowledging the limitations that affect crisis response capability and professional service acts. My emergency contact lists, basic first aid supplies, and small emergency fund demonstrate appropriate elderly preparation, while revealing the resource constraints that limit comprehensive emergency planning and professional service utilization. The problem-solving approaches that I demonstrate during minor household crises involve exactly the kind of creative, resourcefulness and budget-conscious solutions that elderly people often develop through years of experience and necessity. My use of temporary repair solutions, coordination with neighbors for assistance, and careful evaluation of professional service costs create perfect documentation of elderly crisis management, while reinforcing assumptions about financial limitations that prevent immediate professional problem resolution and expensive service coordination. The family communication patterns that I maintain during health concerns, household problems, or social challenges involve appropriate contact with Michael and Jessica while demonstrating awareness of their busy schedules and professional obligations that limit availability for elderly assistance and problem-solving coordination. My careful timing of phone calls, preparation of specific questions, and systematic documentation of issues demonstrate elderly consideration and family respect, while revealing dependency patterns that suggest limited, independent resources and crisis management capability. The decision-making processes that I follow for major purchases, healthcare choices, and household maintenance involve exactly the kind of careful research and budget analysis that elderly people often require when fixed incomes and limited resources demand systematic evaluation of costs, benefits, and long-term implications for every significant expense or commitment. My consultation with family members, research of options,
and careful timeline coordination demonstrate elderly decision-making patterns while reinforcing assumptions about resource limitations and family dependency that affect major life choices and financial plan. As Jessica sat in my modest living room that Thursday evening, observing the carefully constructed evidence of my supposed financial limitations and elderly dependency, she had no idea that every detail of my performance, from the generic medications on my kitchen counter to the thrift store cardigan I was wearing, represented sophisticated character testing and family evaluation that had been documenting her systematic disrespect and growing cruelty toward elderly family members who deserved honor and consideration rather than dismissive resource management and convenient optimization. The furnace repair crisis that she was about to use as justification for elderly marginalization and family obligation reduction would soon trigger revelation of hidden authority and financial power that would transform her comfortable assumptions about inheritance entitlement, devastating education about respect, character, and the consequences that follow when family loyalty failures threaten the very systems that provide prosperity and security across generations of careful planning and strategic investment. The first hint that something didn't quite add up about my supposed financial limitations should have been apparent to anyone paying careful attention during my routine activities throughout Sebastopol. But the assumptions that people make about elderly women living alone in modest circumstances create a kind of cognitive blindness that prevents recognition of inconsistencies that might otherwise trigger curiosity and deeper investigation. The subtle contradictions embedded throughout my daily life were carefully designed to test whether family members and community observers possessed the intelligence and attention to detail necessary to recognize that surface appearances might not reflect underlying reality. The mathematical precision that I displayed during routine calculations, whether determining unit prices during grocery shopping, calculating percentage discounts for sale items, or managing household budget allocations, revealed computational capabilities and analytical thinking that exceeded what most people expected from an elementary school teacher whose supposed technological limitations and educational background suggested more basic mathematical competence. When Jessica occasionally observed me instantly calculating compound savings from multiple coupon combinations, or determining optimal purchase timing based on seasonal price cycles, her assumptions about elderly cognitive decline prevented recognition that such systematic analytical thinking might indicate more sophisticated financial and business expertise than my modest lifestyle suggested. The vocabulary that I use during conversations about financial planning, healthcare coordination, and community involvement occasionally included terminology and conceptual frameworks that reflected more advanced knowledge than expected from someone whose professional background involved elementary education rather than business management, investment coordination, or sophisticated organizational development. My references to amortization schedules when discussing mortgage payments, systematic mention of risk mitigation strategies when evaluating healthcare options, and casual use of portfolio diversification concepts during investment discussions should have triggered questions about where such specialized knowledge originated and why someone with apparent resource limitations demonstrated such sophisticated understanding of complex financial concepts. The reading materials that filled my modest living room included publications and reference materials that seemed inconsistent with the entertainment and practical reading that most elderly people on fixed incomes typically purchase and maintain for personal enjoyment and basic information needs. The subscription to Harvard Business Review that arrived monthly alongside my local newspaper, the collection of agricultural technology journals that I maintained for historical interest, and the financial planning references that occupied space next to romance novels and community newsletters created a reading profile that suggested intellectual interest and professional knowledge that extended far beyond elementary education and retirement. hobby coordination. The technological competencies that I occasionally demonstrated despite my carefully maintained persona of digital confusion and resistance revealed capabilities that contradicted assumptions about elderly learning limitations and generational technology gaps. When household emergencies required quick problem solving or communication coordination, my ability to navigate smartphone applications, access online resources, and coordinate digital solutions with impressive efficiency suggested familiarity and expertise that didn't match my routine displays of technological confusion and preference for traditional paper-based management systems. The academic credentials that I occasionally referenced during conversations about educational policy, curriculum development, and teaching methodology revealed knowledge and experience that seemed disproportionate to the career path that elementary school teachers typically follow throughout their professional development in public education systems. My detailed understanding of advanced mathematical concepts, systematic knowledge of agricultural science principles, and sophisticated grasp of business management theories suggested educational background and professional experience that extended beyond the bachelor's degree in elementary education that I claimed as my primary qualification for classroom teaching. The Stanford University coffee mug that sat prominently in my kitchen cabinet, positioned where visitors could observe it during routine visits, represented the kind of subtle inconsistency that should have prompted questions about my educational history and academic achievement. While many people purchase university merchandise without attending the institution, the specific mug marked with Graduate School of Business rather than general university branding suggested possible graduate-level education and business training that contradicted my claims about elementary education, background, and simple career trajectory through public school teaching. The professional journals and academic publications that I maintained in my spare bedroom bookshelf included specialized materials about agricultural innovation, soil science research, and crop optimization strategies that seemed inconsistent with elementary education interests and retirement hobby reading. The technical complexity of these materials, combined with marginal notes and highlighting that suggested active engagement rather than casual browsing, created evidence of ongoing professional interest and expertise that didn't align with modest retirement activities and community volunteer coordination. The continuing education certificates that I kept in a file folder in my desk drawer documented attendance at agricultural conferences, business management seminars, and financial planning workshops that seemed unnecessary for someone whose professional needs involved elementary education and whose financial circumstances suggested limited resources for professional development and conference attendance. The dates on these certificates revealed ongoing participation in professional development activities throughout recent years, suggesting active engagement with business and agricultural communities, rather than retirement withdrawal from professional learning and industry involvement. The network of professional contacts that I maintained through periodic telephone conversations and occasional correspondence included individuals whose credentials and positions suggested business relationships and industry connections that seemed disproportionate to elementary education, networking, retirement social coordination. The business cards and contact information that I kept organized in a desk file included agricultural consultants, financial advisors, and technology specialists whose professional services would typically be beyond the needs and resources of someone living on Social Security and pension benefit. The investment knowledge that I occasionally demonstrated during conversations about retirement planning, market conditions, and economic trends revealed understanding of sophisticated financial concepts and strategic thinking that exceeded what most people expected from someone whose professional background involved elementary education rather than business management or financial services. My systematic analysis of market volatility, detailed understanding of portfolio diversification principles, and strategic evaluation of economic indicators suggested education and experience that contradicted assumptions about my supposed financial limitations and basic investment understanding. The tax preparation materials that Jessica once observed spread across my dining room table during annual filing season included forms and documentation that seemed more complex than expected for someone whose income sources involved Social Security benefits and a modest pension from the district. The Schedule D forms for capital gains reporting, multiple 1099 documents from various financial institutions, and organized records of deductible expenses suggested investment activity and income streams that didn't align with the simple retirement finances that my lifestyle appeared to reflect. The banking relationships that I maintained extended beyond the basic checking and savings accounts that most elderly people on fixed incomes typically require for routine financial management and bill payment coordination. The statements from multiple financial institutions that occasionally arrived in my mail, the investment account notifications that required periodic review and signature, and the correspondence from financial advisors about portfolio performance created evidence of more complex financial coordination than suggested by my modest lifestyle and apparent budget constraints. The insurance coverage that protected my property and health interests included policy features and coverage levels that seemed more comprehensive than necessary for someone whose assets and income appeared limited to basic retirement resources and whose lifestyle suggested minimal risk exposure and simple protection needs. The umbrella liability coverage, specialized property protection, and enhanced health insurance coordination suggested either excessive caution or asset protection needs that extended beyond what my apparent circumstances would justify. The charitable giving patterns that I maintained through various community organizations and educational institutions reflected systematic donation strategies and tax-advantaged giving approaches that seemed sophisticated for someone whose apparent financial limitations suggested limited discretionary income for philanthropic activity. The organized records of charitable contributions, strategic timing of donation, distributions, and coordination with tax planning objectives revealed financial management expertise that contradicted assumptions about my supposed resource constraints and basic money management capability.
The home maintenance coordination that I managed for my Sebastopol property occasionally revealed contractor relationships and service provider networks that seemed more extensive than expected for someone whose budget constraints supposedly limited access to professional services and property improvement resources. The quality of work performed by contractors who provided periodic maintenance, the prompt response to service requests, and the apparent preference that local service providers showed for my business suggested relationships and payment capability that didn't align with my displays of financial limitation and budget-conscious decision-making. The utility management strategies that I employed for electricity, water, and waste disposal demonstrated optimization approaches and conservation techniques that revealed sophisticated understanding of rate structures, usage patterns, and cost minimization strategies that exceeded what most elderly homeowners typically develop through routine bill payment and basic conservation efforts. My systematic coordination of peak rate avoidance, seasonal usage optimization, and service level managements suggested engineering or business analysis capabilities that seemed inconsistent with elementary education background and modest lifestyle management. The landscaping coordination that maintained my property's appearance involved plant selection, irrigation management, and seasonal maintenance approaches that demonstrated horticultural knowledge and design expertise that exceeded what most homeowners develop through casual gardening and basic yard care activity. The sophisticated soil amendment strategies, strategic plant placement for water conservation, and systematic maintenance scheduling suggested agricultural or landscape design knowledge that seemed inconsistent with elementary education background and retirement hobby gardening. The security measures that protected my property included systems and protocols that seemed more comprehensive than necessary for someone whose apparent circumstances suggested limited assets, requiring protection, and whose neighborhood environment didn't indicate elevated security risks or crime concern. The quality of door locks, window security features, and perimeter protection exceeded what budget-conscious homeowners typically install, suggesting either excessive caution or asset protection needs that extended beyond apparent circumstances. The equipment and tools that I maintained for household management and property care included items that seemed more sophisticated and expensive than necessary for basic maintenance needs and routine household coordination. The quality of gardening tools, household repair equipment, and maintenance supplies suggested either significant investment in property care or professional-grade capabilities that extended beyond typical homeowner needs and retirement hobby coordination. The community relationships that I maintained throughout Sebastopol included connections with individuals whose professional backgrounds and social positioning seemed more diverse and influential than typically associated with elementary education networking and retirement community engagement. The business owners, professional consultants, and community leaders who occasionally visited my home or met with me for coffee discussions suggested social networking and relationship management that extended beyond basic elderly community involvement and volunteer coordination. The professional consultations that I occasionally coordinated for property management, healthcare decisions, and financial planning involved service providers whose credentials and specializations suggested more complex needs and higher-level coordination than typically required for modest retirement planning and basic elderly care management. The attorneys, financial advisors, and healthcare specialists who provided services demonstrated professional relationships that seemed disproportionate to my apparent circumstances and simple coordination needs. The business correspondence that occasionally arrived at my home included communications from organizations and institutions that seemed unrelated to elementary education, retirement planning, or community volunteer activity. The legal notices, financial statements, and business communications that required my attention suggested ongoing involvement in activities and relationships that extended beyond simple retirement coordination and elderly community engagement. The travel coordination that I occasionally managed for visits to other California communities involved trip planning and destination selection that seemed more extensive and sophisticated than typically associated with elderly travel limitations and budget constraints. The systematic coordination of transportation, accommodation, and activity planning suggested travel experience and resource access that didn't align with my displays of financial limitation and simple lifestyle management. The communication patterns that I maintained with contacts throughout California and other states involved telephone conversations and correspondence that seemed more frequent and business-oriented than typically associated with elderly social networking and family relationship maintenance. The systematic scheduling of calls, organized contact management, and detailed record-keeping suggested professional communication, coordination, rather than casual social networking and retirement relationship management. The agricultural knowledge that I occasionally displayed during conversations about farming practices, crop management, and soil science revealed expertise that seemed inconsistent with elementary education background and whose depth suggested professional training or extensive industry experience, rather than casual interest and retirement hobby learning. My detailed understanding of irrigation systems, pest management strategies, and crop rotation principles suggested education and experience that extended beyond general interest and basic gardening knowledge. The business management concepts that I referenced during discussions about organizational efficiency, strategic planning, and resource allocation revealed familiarity with sophisticated management theories and practical application experience that seemed inconsistent with elementary education career paths and public school administrative exposure. My systematic analysis of operational challenges, strategic evaluation of resource optimization, and detailed understanding of performance management suggested business education and professional experience that contradicted my claimed career background. The technology understanding that I occasionally demonstrated, despite my routine displays of digital confusion, revealed knowledge of systems, application, and coordination approaches that suggested more extensive training and experience than typically acquired through casual learning and basic user interaction. My ability to troubleshoot complex problems, coordinate multiple technology solutions, and integrate various digital systems suggested professional technical background that didn't align with elementary education training and elderly technology limitations. The legal and regulatory knowledge that I displayed during conversations about property rights, estate planning, and business compliance revealed understanding of complex legal frameworks and regulatory requirements that exceeded what most people acquire through personal experience and basic legal coordination. My detailed knowledge of contract law, tax regulations, and estate planning strategies suggested legal education or extensive professional experience with business law and financial regulation that contradicted elementary education background and simple retirement planning needs. The financial analysis capabilities that I demonstrated when evaluating investment opportunities, assessing market conditions, and coordinating economic planning revealed mathematical modeling skills and strategic thinking approaches that suggested business school training or professional experience in financial services rather than elementary education background and basic retirement financial management. My systematic evaluation of risk factors, detailed understanding of economic indicators, and sophisticated analysis of investment strategies contradicted assumptions about my supposed financial limitations and simple money management needs. The scheduling efficiency that I maintained for appointments, meetings, and activity coordination demonstrated time management skills and organizational capabilities that seemed more systematic and professional than typically required for retirement activities and elderly community engagement. The detailed calendar management, strategic appointment coordination, and systematic activity planning suggested business training and professional experience with complex schedule management rather than simple elderly lifestyle coordination and community volunteer organization. The resource allocation strategies that I employed for household management, community involvement, and personal activities revealed optimization approaches and efficiency techniques that suggested business management training and professional experience with operational coordination rather than casual household management and retirement activity. The systematic evaluation of priorities, strategic resource deployment, and detailed performance tracking contradicted assumptions about simple elderly lifestyle management and basic retirement coordination. Community involvement and service provider management demonstrated networking skills and relationship management capabilities that seemed more systematic and strategic than typically required for elderly social networking and basic service coordination. The organized contact management, systematic communication scheduling, and strategic relationship maintenance suggested professional networking experience and business relationship management rather than casual elderly social coordination and simple family community. The problem-solving approaches that I employed for household challenges, community coordination, and service management revealed analytical thinking and systematic methodology that suggested professional training and business experience rather than casual problem-solving and basic elderly resource management. The structured analysis of challenges, systematic evaluation of alternatives, and strategic implementation of solutions contradicted assumptions about simple elderly problem-solving and basic retirement lifestyle management. The decision-making processes that I followed for major purchases, service coordination, and activity planning demonstrated evaluation frameworks and analysis approaches that seemed more sophisticated and systematic than typically required for elderly financial management and simple retirement decision. The detailed cost-benefit analysis, systematic vendor evaluation, and strategic implementation suggested business training and professional experience with complex decision-making rather than basic elderly resource management and simple retirement planning. The most significant failure in Jessica's character assessment of my true capabilities lay in her systematic assumption that elderly women living modestly must lack sophistication, business knowledge, and strategic thinking capability, a form of ageism and classism that prevented recognition of obvious inconsistencies that should have triggered curiosity and deeper investigation about my background and actual circumstance. Her comfortable dismissal of elderly potential and systematic devaluation of my intelligence created exactly the kind of cognitive blindness that enabled my character testing and family evaluation to proceed without detection or interference. Michael's failure to recognize the contradictions in his mother's supposed circumstances reflected similar assumptions about elderly limitation and financial dependence, combined with busy professional schedules and family obligations that limited detailed attention to subtle inconsistencies and background anomalies that might have revealed the sophisticated planning and resource management that enabled his own career advancement and lifestyle security. His acceptance of my modest appearance and simple lifestyle prevented investigation of the support systems and professional coordination that had facilitated his success throughout Northern California's competitive agricultural consulting market. The community members who interacted with me regularly through volunteer activities, social networking, and service coordination also failed to recognize the inconsistencies between my apparent circumstances and the subtle indicators of sophisticated knowledge and extensive resources that occasionally emerged during routine interactions and casual conversation. Their assumptions about elderly limitation and modest retirement circumstances prevented recognition of the strategic thinking and professional capability that enabled my effective community coordination and volunteer management throughout various organizations and service activities. The service providers who worked with me for property maintenance, healthcare coordination, and professional services occasionally observed capabilities and knowledge that seemed inconsistent with my apparent circumstance, but their professional focus and customer service priorities prevented deeper investigation or questioning about the source of my sophisticated understanding and strategic coordination that exceeded typical elderly service needs and basic lifestyle management requirements. As Jessica prepared to deliver her ultimate assessment of my life expectancy and family resource allocation that Thursday evening in November 2024, she remained completely unaware that every inconsistencies she had observed and dismissed, every contradiction she had failed to investigate, assumption she had made about elderly limitation and financial dependency was about to be systematically destroyed through revelation of hidden authority and sophisticated business coordination that would transform her comfortable assumptions about inheritance entitlement into devastating education about respect, character, and the consequences that follow when family loyalty failures threaten the very systems that enable prosperity and security across generations of strategic planning and careful investment. The subtle contradictions that should have warned Jessica about the woman she was dismissing were about to become undeniable evidence of her systematic failure to recognize hidden authority and sophisticated, while teaching her that assumptions about elderly limitation can cost millions of dollars when they prevent recognition of the financial power and business expertise that determine family prosperity and inheritance security throughout Northern California's competitive economy and challenging social environment. The transformation of Jessica Chen from a respected young woman who initially demonstrated appropriate family consideration and elderly respect into someone whose priorities could be systematically corrupted by social positioning, obsessions, and lifestyle enhancement goals had been gradual but comprehensively documented through 5 years of careful observation and character assessment. When Michael first introduced Jessica to our family during a wine tasting event in Napa Valley in 2019, her behavior reflected genuine interest in family relationships, authentic curiosity about agricultural tradition, and the kind of respectful engagement with elderly family members that suggested solid character foundation and cultural values worthy of long-term family investment and inheritance consideration. The early interactions that characterized Jessica's relationship with our family during her courtship with Michael revealed someone who understood intergenerational respect, appreciated family history, and demonstrated genuine interest in learning about agricultural heritage and community traditions that had shaped our family's identity throughout decades of Northern California development. Her questions about my teaching career, respectful attention during family storytelling, and appropriate contribution to holiday celebrations suggested character development and family loyalty that aligned with the values necessary for continued family support and potential inheritance eligibility across generations of family prosperity and community involvement. The initial gift-giving patterns that Jessica established during birthdays, holidays, and special family occasions reflected thoughtful consideration of individual preferences, appropriate financial investment, and the kind of personal attention that demonstrated genuine, caring, rather than obligation fulfillment or social positioning management. Her selection of books related to my teaching interests, handmade items that reflected time investment and creative effort, and experiences designed to create shared memories, suggested authentic relationship building and elderly respect that honored family traditions while building meaningful connections across generational differences and lifestyle variation. The conversation patterns that characterized Jessica's early family interactions involved genuine curiosity about family history, respectful questions about life experiences, and appropriate sharing of her own background and aspirations that demonstrated healthy relationship development and mutual interest building. Her attentive listening during family stories, thoughtful follow-up questions about historical events and family tradition, and respectful integration of her own cultural background suggested character foundation and interpersonal skills that predicted successful family integration and long-term relationship stability worthy of family support and inheritance consideration. The community involvement that Jessica initially demonstrated through participation in local events, volunteer activities, and cultural organizations suggested someone who understood the importance of civic engagement and social contribution beyond personal advancement and lifestyle enhancement. Her assistance with community fundraising events, participation in local environmental initiatives, and support for educational programs demonstrated values, alignment, and community commitment that complemented family traditions of social responsibility and cultural contribution throughout Sonoma County's diverse communities and organizations. The gradual character deterioration that transformed Jessica from a respectable family member into someone whose priorities reflected competitive social positioning and lifestyle optimization began during her second year of marriage to Mike, when their relocation to an expensive Napa Valley neighborhood introduced social pressures and lifestyle comparisons that systematically undermined her previous values and family relationship priorities. The affluent social environment that surrounded their new home created constant exposure to wealth demonstration, status competition, and the kind of lifestyle management that treats family relationships as strategic assets rather than sources of emotional fulfillment and mutual support. The neighborhood dynamics that influenced Jessica's changing attitudes included regular interaction with families whose financial resources enabled private school education, luxury travel, and expensive entertainment that required increasingly sophisticated lifestyle management and social positioning strategies. The informal competition that characterized neighborhood social networking created pressure for constant lifestyle enhancement, status demonstration, and the kind of family image management that prioritized appearance over authentic relationship development and elderly respect that honored family traditions and intergenerational wisdom. The social networking events that became central to Jessica's weekly activities introduced her to women whose priorities focused primarily on lifestyle optimization, children's competitive educational positioning, and husband's career advancement that required strategic family management and resource allocation decisions. The conversations that dominated these social gatherings consistently emphasized material achievement, status demonstration, and competitive parenting strategies that gradually reshaped Jessica's understanding of family priorities and relationship management toward efficiency and optimization rather than love and respect. The parenting philosophy that Jessica adopted through exposure to Napa Valley's competitive educational environment involved systematic evaluation of every family decision according to children's advancement opportunities, social positioning benefit, and long-term competitive advantage development
that required careful resource allocation and time management optimization. The pressure to ensure Emma and David's enrollment in elite educational programs, participation in expensive extracurricular activities, and access to exclusive social networking created systematic family management approaches that treated elderly involvement as optional rather than valuable cultural resource and wisdom. The lifestyle management strategies that Jessica implemented to maintain her family's social positioning within Napa Valley's affluent community required increasingly sophisticated resource allocation, time optimization, and relationship management that prioritized measurable outcomes over emotional connection and family tradition maintenance. The systematic evaluation of every social commitment, family obligation, and community involvement, according to strategic value and advancement potential, gradually excluded considerations that didn't provide quantifiable returns on investment or social positioning enhancement. The pattern of elderly marginalization that became increasingly apparent in Jessica's family management approach represented sophisticated psychological manipulation and relationship restructuring that systematically reduced my involvement in family decisions, social activities, and grandchildren's educational and cultural development. The scheduling strategies that Jessica employed consistently created conflicts between family gatherings and my availability, positioned important events during times that challenged elderly participation, and established social obligations that excluded elderly involvement, while maintaining appearance of family consideration and appropriate care coordination. The conversation management techniques that Jessica utilized during family gatherings involved subtle redirection of discussions away from topics where elderly wisdom and experience might provide valuable input, systematic interruption of my contributions to family planning conversation, and the kind of gentle dismissal that treated elderly perspectives as outdated rather than foundational wisdom that deserved respect and consideration. The systematic exclusion of my input regarding grandchildren's education, family tradition, maintenance, and community involvement created an environment where elderly contribution was viewed as burden rather than resource. The gift-giving patterns that Jessica established for special occasions gradually transitioned from thoughtful personal items that reflected individual consideration to practical necessities and generic presents that suggested elderly needs management rather than relationship celebration and family honor. The household items, basic clothing, and gift cards that replaced meaningful presents demonstrated systematic devaluation of elderly preferences and interests in favor of efficient obligation fulfillment that required minimal time investment and personal attention. The grandchildren's interaction patterns with me reflected Jessica's systematic influence and guidance about elderly relationships that positioned grandparents as optional entertainment rather than wisdom sources, and family foundation that provide cultural continuity and emotional support throughout child development character formation. Emma and David's increasingly brief and distracted interactions during family visits suggested coaching about appropriate elderly engagement that didn't interfere with their educational priorities, social development, activity, and competitive advancement opportunities that Jessica considered more valuable than intergenerational relationship building. The holiday coordination that revealed Jessica's systematic approach to elderly marginalization involved careful scheduling of celebrations, activities, and traditions that minimized my central involvement, while maintaining appearance of family inclusion and appropriate respect. The transition from family gatherings at my home to restaurant celebrations, exclusive events that required expensive participation, and social networking occasions that emphasized contemporary lifestyle rather than family tradition, created systematic exclusion while avoiding direct confrontation or obvious elderly dismissal that might create family conflict. The social relationships that Jessica cultivated through my agricultural consulting career introduced additional pressures and influences that systematically undermined her respect for family traditions and elderly wisdom, while reinforcing competitive lifestyle management and social positioning strategies. The wives of successful professionals, who formed Jessica's primary social network, consistently demonstrated values and priorities that treated elderly family members as obligations, rather than viewing family care responsibilities as burdens that interfered with lifestyle optimization and career advancement support. The business networking events that became central to Jessica's social calendar created constant exposure to families whose elderly relatives lived in assisted living facilities, received professional care services, or maintained minimal family involvement that enabled younger generations to focus resources and attention on career advancement and lifestyle enhancement without elderly care obligations and family relationship maintenance that required time and emotional investment. The systematic normalization of elderly institutionalization and family care outsourcing gradually reshaped Jessica's expectations about appropriate family responsibility and elderly involvement. The educational networking that Jessica pursued through Emma and David's private school community introduced additional social pressures and competitive parenting strategies that required systematic resource allocation and priority management to ensure children's advancement opportunities and social positioning within elite educational environments. The conversations with other parents consistently emphasized optimization strategies, competitive advantage development.
The Mother's Day coordination that followed in May 2022 revealed Jessica's systematic devaluation of elderly appreciation and family honor through minimal gift investment, perfunctory celebration planning, and the kind of obligation fulfillment that treated maternal recognition as inconvenience rather than family priority and cultural tradition. The gift card to a discount retailer, combined with brief restaurant meal and early departure for children's activities, demonstrated systematic reduction of elderly celebration and family respect in favor of convenience and schedule optimization. The emergency response assessment that occurred during my supposed medical crisis in August 2022 provided perfect documentation of Jessica's systematic prioritization of social obligations over family emergency assistance and elderly care responsibility. When I contacted Michael about transportation needs for an urgent medical appointment, Jessica's immediate concern focused on scheduling conflicts with planned social events rather than family emergency response and elderly care coordination. Her suggestion that I coordinate with community transportation services revealed systematic preparation for elderly care outsourcing and family responsibility elimination. The grandchildren's birthday celebration coordination that Jessica managed throughout 2022 and 2023 revealed systematic exclusion of my involvement in gift selection, party planning, celebration activities that had previously provided meaningful grandparent contribution and family tradition maintenance. The transition to expensive entertainment venues, exclusive guest lists, and professional party coordination eliminated opportunities for elderly involvement while requiring resources that exceeded my supposed financial capabilities and social networking access. The educational decision-making processes that Jessica coordinated for Emma and David's academic planning consistently excluded my input and experience despite my professional background in education and decades of teaching expertise that could have provided valuable guidance and support. Her systematic dismissal of my educational insights, curriculum knowledge, and child development understanding revealed growing disrespect for elderly wisdom and professional experience that contradicted her assumptions about contemporary educational requirements and competitive advancement strategy. The communication pattern changes that Jessica implemented beginning in early 2023 involved systematic reduction of family contact frequency, limitation of conversation duration, and the kind of schedule management that treated elderly interaction as obligation rather than relationship maintenance and family connection opportunity. The transition from weekly phone calls to monthly check-ins, combined with systematic timing during Jessica's availability rather than my convenience, demonstrated growing control over family communication and elderly access to family relationship maintenance. The transportation dependency management that Jessica coordinated for my community involvement and social activities involved subtle discouragement of my independence and mobility, while maintaining appearance of safety concern and appropriate elderly care. Her expressions of worry about my driving capabilities, suggestions about transportation alternatives, and offers of limited assistance that required advanced scheduling and convenience optimization created systematic dependence, while positioning family control as protective care rather than elderly autonomy limitation. The social networking isolation that Jessica achieved through careful scheduling and activity coordination eliminated opportunities for me to develop independent relationships with other family friends, community members, and social networks that might provide alternative perspectives on family relationships and elderly respect. The systematic exclusion from dinner parties, social gatherings, and community events that included other elderly participants prevented relationship development that might challenge Jessica's family management approach and elderly marginalization strategy. The information management strategies that Jessica employed involved careful control of family communication and decision-making, coordination, that limited my awareness of family financial planning, major decisions, and social activities that might require elderly input or involvement. The systematic exclusion from family business discussions, vacation planning, and educational coordination created information asymmetry that reduced my ability to provide guidance, assistance, or alternative perspectives that might challenge Jessica's family management approach and resource allocation decisions. The health monitoring manipulation that Jessica implemented involved systematic expressions of concern about my physical capabilities, cognitive function, and independent living safety that positioned elderly care as growing burden requiring family management and resource allocation. Her suggestions about medical evaluations, safety assessments, and home modification needs created narrative of elderly decline and dependency that justified increased family control and reduced autonomy while maintaining appearance of appropriate care and safety concern. The resource allocation discussions that Jessica initiated during family financial planning revealed systematic assumptions about my financial limitations and dependency that positioned elderly support as family obligation requiring sacrifice and resource diversion from more important priorities like children's education and lifestyle maintenance. Her casual references to my fixed income limitations and suggestions about appropriate elderly financial management demonstrated comfortable assumptions about my economic circumstances and family financial hierarchy that justified reduced elderly support and limited resource allocation. The inheritance planning conversations that Jessica occasionally referenced during family discussions revealed comfortable expectations about future wealth transfer and estate coordination that treated my assets as inevitable family resources requiring strategic management and optimization. Her suggestions about estate planning modernization, asset protection strategies, and inheritance tax minimization demonstrated assumptions about family financial coordination and elderly wealth management that positioned my resources as family entitlement rather than individual property requiring respect and appropriate planning. The lifestyle comparison discussions Jessica frequently initiated during family gatherings involved systematic positioning of my modest circumstances against other families' elderly care arrangements and resource allocation strategies that normalized elderly limitation and family support reduction. Her references to assisted living facilities, professional care services, and family financial optimization strategies gradually established narrative of practical elderly management that justified reduced family involvement and resource allocation. The gift-giving reciprocity expectations that Jessica established during special occasions revealed assumptions about my financial capabilities and appropriate elderly contribution levels that positioned my gifts as evidence of limited resources rather than thoughtful relationship investment and family affection. Her expressions of concern about my overspending on gifts, suggestions about appropriate elderly budgeting, and casual dismissal of my contributions as sweet but unnecessary demonstrated systematic evaluation of elderly financial autonomy and gift-giving appropriateness. The emergency financial assistance discussions that Jessica occasionally referenced during family planning conversations revealed comfortable assumptions about my financial vulnerability and family responsibility for elderly support during crisis situations. Her casual references to what we'll do if mom needs help and systematic planning for elderly care costs demonstrated assumptions about my financial dependency and family obligation that positioned elderly support as inevitable burden, requiring strategic preparation and resource allocation. The furnace repair situation that developed during October 2024 provided perfect opportunity for comprehensive character assessment and family loyalty evaluation through Jessica's response to elderly comfort needs and basic facility maintenance coordination. The $8,400 repair estimate for heating system replacement created exactly the kind of family expense decision that reveals authentic values about elderly care priority versus lifestyle optimization and resource allocation that benefits younger family members' financial planning and discretionary spending opportunity. The preliminary conversations that Jessica initiated with Michael about practical elderly care planning revealed systematic preparation for positioning my comfort needs as optional expenses that interfered with more important family financial priorities and educational investment strategy. Her research into senior living facilities that provide comprehensive heating and maintenance services demonstrated strategic planning for elderly obligation elimination while maintaining appearance of family concern and responsible care coordination. The family meeting coordination that Jessica arranged for November 14, 2024, was presented as necessary discussion about Mom's housing situation and practical planning for her remaining years, but actually represented carefully coordinated intervention designed to establish family consensus about elderly care limitation and resource reallocation that would benefit their lifestyle enhancement while reducing family obligation and personal involvement that might compromise their social positioning and financial flexibility. The documentation strategies that Jessica employed to justify elderly care limitation involved systematic collection of evidence about my supposed financial constraints, health limitations, and independence challenges that could support arguments for alternative care arrangements and family resource redirection. Her coordination of medical information, property maintenance records, and lifestyle limitation documentation created comprehensive case for elderly marginalization while maintaining appearance of responsible family planning and appropriate care concern. The stakeholder coordination that Jessica managed for the crucial family meeting involved careful preparation of talking points, strategic information presentation, and the kind of professional-style family management that treated elderly care as business decision, requiring efficiency optimization, rather than family relationship requiring love and respect. Her systematic approach to family coordination and decision-making demonstrated sophisticated manipulation and control strategies that positioned elderly dismissal as practical family management, rather than character failure and family loyalty destruction. The confidence that Jessica displayed while preparing for the November 14th family meeting reflected her comfortable assumptions about successful elderly marginalization and family obligation reduction through practical arguments and resource optimization strategies that would position my basic comfort needs as unreasonable expense interfering with more important family priority. Her systematic preparation for elderly dismissal and care limitation revealed moral bankruptcy and character failure that justified comprehensive consequences and educational intervention through hidden authority, revelation, and inheritance restructuring. The strategic coordination that Jessica employed for family decision-making evolved careful positioning of elderly care as burden rather than honor, systematic devaluation of my contribution and wisdom, and that kind of efficiency optimization that treated family relationships as resource allocation problems requiring business solutions rather than love and respect, that honored lifetime contribution and sacrifice. Her professional approach to family management revealed systematic dehumanization and elderly marginalization that violated every principle of intergenerational respect and cultural continuity. The timing selection that Jessica chose for delivering her ultimate assessment of my life expectancy and family resource allocation reflected careful calculation about optimal circumstances for elderly dismissal and family obligation elimination. Her choice to coordinate the family meeting during Michael's busy work period
her systematic preparation of practical arguments about financial efficiency, and her comfortable expectations about family consensus demonstrated sophisticated manipulation and control strategies that positioned elderly marginalization as reasonable family planning rather than character failure. The communication strategies that Jessica prepared for justifying elderly care limitation evolved systematic presentation of practical arguments, financial optimization, and efficiency benefits that would position my basic comfort needs as optional expenses rather than family priority and elderly dignity requirement. Her careful preparation of talking points about alternative care options, resource allocation, and family financial planning revealed systematic preparation for elderly dismissal and family loyalty destruction that justified immediate consequences and comprehensive educational intervention. As Jessica prepared to deliver her ultimate assessment of my mortality and family resource allocation during that Thursday evening in November, she remained completely confident that her systematic elderly marginalization and family management approach would be accepted as reasonable planning and efficient obligation fulfillment. Her comfortable expectations about successful elderly dismissal reflected character failure so profound it justified immediate revelation of hidden authority and comprehensive consequences that would transform her assumptions about inheritance entitlement into devastating education about respect, character, and family loyalty requirements that govern generational wealth transfer and community prosperity throughout Northern California's competitive social environment. The systematic documentation of Jessica's character deterioration, from respectful family member to entitled manager of elderly obligation, provided perfect justification for inheritance restructuring and financial consequence implementation that would teach her about the relationship between character demonstration and continued family support throughout generations of careful planning and strategic investment that require moral foundation worthy of generational wealth, stewardship, and community leadership responsibility. The silence that followed Jessica's casual dismissal of my mortality, "She'll be dead soon anyway," provided the perfect dramatic pause for me to begin the systematic destruction of every assumption she had made about elderly limitation, financial dependency, and family hierarchy management. As I sat in my modest living room, observing her comfortable expectation that her cruel assessment would be accepted as reasonable family plan, I realized that 5 years of character testing had provided irrefutable evidence that Jessica's moral foundation had deteriorated beyond any possibility of rehabilitation through gentle correction or family counseling intervention. "Jessica D," I said with the patient tone that elderly wisdom uses when younger family members finally demonstrate readiness for comprehensive education about respect and consequence. "I think there might be some fundamental confusion about who has the authority to determine family financial priorities and resource allocation in this situation." The puzzled expression that crossed Jessica's face revealed her growing awareness that my response suggested knowledge and authority that contradicted her comfortable assumptions about elderly limitation and financial dependence. Michael's immediate attention to our conversation demonstrated his recognition that something significant was developing, though he remained unaware of the scope of revelation and consequence implementation that was about to transform his family's understanding of financial security and inheritance entitlement. "What do you mean, Mom?" Michael asked with genuine confusion that reflected his complete ignorance about the sophisticated business operations and wealth management systems that had been supporting his lifestyle, career advancement, and family prosperity for over 2 decades of strategic coordination and financial assistance. "Well," I replied while reaching for the folder that I had prepared for this exact moment, "I think it's time for both of you to meet the person who has been funding your entire lifestyle, professional development, and children's educational opportunities, while being dismissed as a burden, whose basic comfort needs represent wasteful expenses." The document that I placed on my coffee table contained the business registration papers
corporate structure documentation, and financial statements that revealed my identity as Margaret Elizabeth Thornfield, founder and sole controlling shareholder of Thornfield Industries, a $1.2 billion agricultural technology empire that had revolutionized sustainable farming practices throughout the western United States, maintaining complete operational anonymity through sophisticated privacy protection and wealth management coordination that prevented family knowledge or community recognition of my actual business authority and financial capability. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced to Michael and Jessica while opening the folder that contained evidence of their complete financial dependency. My name is Dr. Margaret Thornfield, and I am the founder, principal director, and controlling shareholder of Thornfield Industries, which has generated over $1.2 billion in revenue through agricultural innovation, sustainable farming technology, and land management coordination throughout California, Oregon, and Washington. The comprehensive silence that greeted this announcement revealed the systematic shock that accompanies complete worldview destruction and the recognition that fundamental assumptions about financial relationships and family authority were entirely incorrect. Jessica's expression transformed from confident dismissal to growing horror as she began processing the implications of having systematically disrespected and marginalized the very person who controlled her family's entire financial foundation and inheritance security. The comfortable lifestyle that has enabled your family to maintain a $3.8 million estate in Napa Valley, I continued while observing Jessica's growing comprehension of her catastrophic miscalculation, including the mortgage assistance that enabled your property purchase, the private school coordination that supports Emma and David's educational advancement, and the comprehensive financial backing that made Michael's consulting career possible, actually represents systematic foundation benefits that require ongoing demonstration of family loyalty and elderly respect as conditions for continued support and inheritance eligibility. The detailed documentation that I spread across my coffee table included property ownership records showing my purchase of their Napa Valley estate through subsidiary coordination, educational funding statements, revealing my anonymous support of their children's private school attendance, business development records demonstrating my systematic coordination of Michael's professional opportunities through agricultural industry networking and client relationship management that had created his reputation and career advancement throughout Northern California's competitive consulting market. "Michael, sweetheart," I said, with the gentle explanation that maternal love provides when adult children finally demonstrate readiness to understand the scope of family support they had never recognized. "Every major consulting contract that built your professional reputation, every client relationship that generated your primary income, and every business opportunity that advanced your career has been carefully coordinated through Thornfield Industries' agricultural network and industry influence throughout Northern California's farming and wine production community." The client portfolio analysis that I presented revealed systematic business development coordination that had created Michael's success through strategic introductions, contract negotiation assistance, and ongoing relationship management that operated invisibly through industry networks and professional association. The agricultural consulting firm where Michael worked had secured its most profitable relationships through my coordination and influence, though he believed his expertise and professional reputation attracted these opportunities through individual merit and marketing effectiveness. "The $7.3 million inheritance that you've been expecting," I explained while Jessica's comfortable assumptions about financial security collapsed around her understanding of family hierarchy and resource control, including the comprehensive trust fund coordination that would have enabled your children's continued educational advancement and lifestyle maintenance, has been managed entirely through foundation resources that I have been coordinating since Emma and David's births. The inherited documentation revealed sophisticated estate planning and wealth transfer coordination that had positioned Jessica's family for generational prosperity,
while requiring ongoing character demonstration and elderly respect as fundamental conditions for continued eligibility and financial support. The trust structures, investment coordination, and asset protection strategies that governed their expected inheritance represented decades of strategic planning and legal coordination that could be restructured immediately based on character assessment results and family loyalty evaluation. The systematic dismissal of elderly family members during routine care discussions, I continued while Jessica processed the devastating scope of her financial dependency on the woman she had just dismissed as dying bird represents exactly the kind of character failure that justifies immediate inheritance restructuring and foundation benefit elimination to protect family assets, while providing education about respect, loyalty, and the moral foundation necessary for sustainable financial relationships and generational wealth stewardship. The telephone call that I placed to Dr. Sarah Chen, Executive Director of Thornfield Industries Family Coordination Division, initiated the immediate implementation of consequences and inheritance restructuring that would provide Jessica with comprehensive education about the relationship between character demonstration and continued family support. Chen's arrival 45 minutes later brought official documentation of benefits suspension, inheritance restructuring, and financial independence transition that would transform Jessica's comfortable assumptions about automatic wealth transfer into devastating reality about respect requirements and character standards. Chen announced to Jessica while presenting the official notice that initiated immediate restructuring of inheritance, allocation, and suspension of all Thornfield Industries benefits. This documentation initiates comprehensive review of your family's foundation eligibility and inheritance consideration based on character assessment results that indicate systematic elderly disrespect and family loyalty failure that violates fundamental requirements for continued financial assistance and generational wealth transfer. The inheritance restructuring notice that Dr. Chen delivered informed Jessica that her expected $7.3 million inheritance would be redirected to the Thornfield Foundation for Elderly Dignity and Family Respect, ensuring that her previous wealth expectations would contribute to community education and support services for elderly individuals who experienced family dismissal and systematic marginalization. The charitable redirection would honor her contribution to community welfare while teaching her that true prosperity requires demonstration of character worthy of generational wealth stewardship. The benefits suspension documentation revealed the comprehensive scope of financial assistance that would be eliminated immediately, including mortgage support coordination that had enabled their Napa Valley estate purchase, educational funding that supported their children's private school attendance, and the professional networking assistance that had built Michael's consulting career through industry relationships and client development coordination. The systematic elimination of these support systems would provide Jessica with practical education about the actual cost of maintaining their affluent lifestyle without family financial coordination. Chen explained while Jessica's social positioning and lifestyle security dissolved around her understanding of financial reality includes transfer of your Napa Valley estate to foundation ownership. Since the mortgage assistance and property coordination that enabled your residence was provided through foundation resources, requiring character demonstration and family loyalty, that recent assessment indicates has failed to meet minimum standards for continued support. The media coordination that Dr. Chen implemented ensured comprehensive community awareness and educational impact that would provide lasting lessons about elderly respect and family loyalty throughout Northern California's affluent professional network. The story of how a dismissive daughter-in-law learned that casual cruelty toward elderly family members could cost millions of dollars in inheritance became legendary documentation of consequences that follow when character failures threaten family financial security and inheritance eligibility. The agricultural industry networking that spread awareness of Jessica's character failure throughout Napa Valley's professional communities created lasting reputation consequences that would affect her social positioning and business networking opportunities throughout the region's competitive social environment. The systematic documentation of her elderly dismissal and family loyalty destruction provided community education about the relationship between character demonstration and professional credibility that would influence her future social networking and lifestyle coordination. Educational institution coordination that revealed my anonymous support of various private schools and university programs throughout Northern California created broader awareness of the sophisticated philanthropy and community investment that elderly individuals often coordinate while being dismissed by family members who fail to recognize wisdom and authority. The systematic documentation of my charitable giving and educational support provided community education about assumptions regarding elderly capability and financial authority. The real estate market impact that resulted from Jessica's inheritance, loss, and property transition created broader community awareness of the financial consequences that follow family character failures and elderly disparity. The systematic documentation of her lifestyle collapse and social positioning destruction provided lasting education about the relationship between moral foundation and financial security throughout affluent communities that prioritize material success over family loyalty and elderly respect. Professional networking consequences that affected Michael's consulting career created additional community education about the systematic support and industry coordination that often enables individual success while remaining invisible to beneficiaries who assume their achievements reflect sole personal merit and professional capability. The systematic revelation of his dependency on family business coordination provided broader education about recognizing and honoring family contribution and elderly wisdom. The redemption pathway that I offered Jessica and Michael provided comprehensive opportunity for character restoration and family relationship healing through demonstrated change and systematic commitment to elderly respect and family loyalty, worthy of potential future consideration for limited financial assistance and relationship rebuilding. The rehabilitation requirements included extensive community service with elderly populations, family counseling coordination, and systematic education about intergenerational respect and cultural continuity that honors wisdom and experience. Jessica, I said with the compassionate guidance that elderly love provides when family members demonstrate readiness for character development and moral foundation rebuilding. The consequences you're experiencing aren't punishment, they're education about the relationship between character and prosperity, respect and security, family loyalty and inheritance eligibility that governs sustainable wealth and generational prosperity.
The community service requirements that I established for potential character rehabilitation included 500 hours of volunteer work with elderly care organizations, systematic participation in family counseling programs, and demonstrated commitment to elderly respect education that would provide comprehensive learning about dignity, wisdom, and the cultural contributions that aging family members offer throughout community development and family prosperity. Coordination. The family relationship restoration process that could potentially lead to limited financial assistance and inheritance consideration required ongoing demonstration of character change, systematic elderly respect, and family loyalty that honored lifetime contribution while building authentic relationships worthy of trust and generational wealth. Stewardship. The character development standards that governed potential rehabilitation emphasized authentic change rather than convenient performance during family obligations. The children's education coordination that would continue regardless of their parents' character failures ensured Emma and David's access to educational opportunities while providing them with lessons about respect, character, and family loyalty that would prepare them for potential future inheritance consideration based on their individual character development rather than parental influence. The systematic protection of children's educational advancement, while maintaining character standards, provided generational education about values and moral foundation. The widespread community awareness that resulted from Jessica's character failure and inheritance loss created lasting education about elderly respect, family loyalty, and the hidden authority and capability that aging individuals often possess, while being dismissed by younger generations, who make assumptions about elderly limitation and financial dependence. The systematic documentation of her cruel dismissal and devastating consequences provided regional education about character requirements and moral foundation necessary for family harmony and generational prosperity. The professional network education that spread throughout Northern California's agricultural and business communities revealed the sophisticated coordination and industry influence that elderly individuals often maintain while appearing to live modest retirement lifestyle. The systematic documentation of my business authority and financial capability provided broader community education about recognizing and respecting elderly contribution and wisdom that enables family and community prosperity. The social media documentation that recorded Jessica's character and consequence implementation created lasting digital evidence of the relationship between elderly respect and inheritance eligibility that would provide educational value for other families and professional communities throughout California and beyond. The systematic sharing of her story created viral education about family loyalty requirements and character standards that govern generational wealth transfer and community respect. The academic institutional coordination that revealed my systematic educational support and philanthropic contribution throughout Northern California created broader awareness of the sophisticated community investment and charitable coordination that elderly individuals often provide, while being dismissed as burdens by family members who fail to recognize their authority and capability. The systematic documentation of my educational philanthropy provided community education about elderly contribution and social impact. The legal profession education that resulted from the inheritance restructuring and estate planning modification created broader professional awareness, character-based wealth transfer and family loyalty requirements that could inform estate planning and family coordination throughout affluent communities. The systematic documentation of character assessment protocols and inheritance eligibility standards provided legal education about innovative approaches to generational wealth, stewardship and family character development. The transformation of Jessica's inheritance into the Thornfield Foundation for Elderly Dignity and Family Respect created lasting institutional memory and educational resource that would provide comprehensive support for elderly individuals who experienced family dismissal while building community awareness about respect requirements and character standards that govern healthy family relationships and intergenerational harmony. The Foundation's mission honored Jessica's contribution to community education while providing lasting benefit to individuals who demonstrated the values she had failed to maintain. The systematic documentation of Jessica's character failure and inheritance loss became legendary throughout Northern California's professional communities as evidence of the consequences that follow when assumptions about elderly limitation prevent recognition of hidden authority and sophisticated capability. The story provided lasting education about the relationship between respect and security, character and prosperity, family loyalty and inheritance eligibility that governed sustainable wealth and generational community contribution. The broader social impact that resulted from comprehensive community education about elderly respect and family character created lasting cultural change and awareness that influenced family relationship standards throughout affluent communities. The systematic documentation of character requirements and moral foundation necessary for family harmony provided educational value that extended far beyond individual consequence implementation to create regional cultural improvement and community development. The personal satisfaction that I experienced from implementing comprehensive education about respect and consequences reflected the successful completion of character assessment and family evaluation that had documented 5 years of systematic observation and testing. The transformation of comfortable assumptions about inheritance entitlement into devastating education about character requirements provided perfect conclusion to family coordination and community education that honored elderly dignity while building moral foundation worthy of generational prosperity. I concluded while observing Jessica's complete comprehension of her catastrophic character failure and Michael's shocked understanding of his lifetime financial dependence. Family financial security and inheritance eligibility must be built on genuine respect and demonstrated character rather than convenient assumptions and entitled expectations. Sometimes the most powerful education you can provide dismissive family members is comprehensive understanding that elderly wisdom and financial authority aren't optional conveniences that disappear when they become inconvenient for lifestyle optimization and social positioning strategies. The story of how a cruel daughter-in-law learned that dismissing elderly family members during routine care discussions could cost her entire inheritance and financial security became the most expensive lesson about respect and family loyalty that any ungrateful relative had ever received. The woman she casually dismissed as dying burden turned out to control not just her lifestyle and children's education, but her entire economic future, teaching her that respect for aging family members isn't just moral obligation, it's practical necessity for anyone who wants to maintain financial security and inheritance eligibility in families where character determines prosperity and elderly wisdom guides generational wealth management and community prosperity. Jessica's assumption that she could dismiss me with casual cruelty about my mortality transformed into devastating recognition that she was the one whose entire lifestyle depended on financial systems she had never suspected existed. The dying old woman she had written off as wasteful expense actually controlled every aspect of her family's prosperity and could eliminate their entire financial future with decisions that honored respect and character over entitlement and elderly dismissal. The final lesson: true wealth isn't just about money, it's about character, respect, and the wisdom to recognize that the most powerful people in any family might be the ones who look the most ordinary, and that assumptions about elderly limitation can cost everything when they prevent recognition of the authority and capability that determine family prosperity across generations of careful planning and community contribution.